Let this populate so I know how many people are in here. Let's see. 0, 30. 30 is good enough. We're rolling. All right. Welcome, guys. This is live stream 18. Live stream 18. And the topic tonight is going to be 2021, a year in review. We've picked out a few topics. I don't think we'll get to all of them because they're so vast. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to go to some of the biggest events that took place during the past year and just talk about that and kick that around for a while. So obviously we're at the very onset of 2022, and we're going to look back as we move forward to the new year. So the first topic tonight is going to be January 6th. Everybody should know the significance of that. Okay. Another topic, and we could, depending on what the panel wants to do, border crisis and or obviously Afghanistan fallen. So I think between those three, I don't think we're going to get past those. But if we do, I'm sure we can pull something else out of our ass. So with that being said, we may have another panelist or two jumping on later. I don't know. I haven't heard from them. Regardless, we're gonna push. So I'm gonna go around the horn, introduce everybody in case you live in a ditch in a hole or something. First guy is Les. He is a Pegasus Test on YouTube, so be sure to check out his YouTube channel. Subscribe to him. Les is a Marine that served in the early 90s. He's a veteran of the Gulf War. He has his own logistics company as well as tactical training company, and just always brings a great perspective to the chat. Next, we have Dr. Christopher Larson. He's the accomplished author. He's written many books on small unit tactics. He is the original founder of the One Shepherd Leadership Institute, going 40 years strong. He's a veteran of the United States Army. He was an NCO, and he served in Korea. So always brings a great perspective and a wealth of knowledge to this panel. Last but not least, I got my good buddy Chad. Chad and I served together in Afghanistan, Helmand Province, Afghanistan, back in 2010, 2011 timeframe with Bravo 123 Infantry Line Company. So we've known each other at least since then. We served together. I think first time we met was in 2006 when we both joined Bravo. But Chad goes back to serving in the initial invasion in Iraq and 1st LAR. And then he redeployed in 2004 where he served in Operation Phantom Fury, which is, to those that you don't know, is Fallujah, the second offensive. So that is our panel tonight, guys. And again, reintroducing our first topic. It's going to be January 6th and the events that unfolded on that day. So do I even have to ask who wants to kick this off, or should I just say, let's take it?
Okay, I'll run with it. So first thing about January 6th that just puts a bug up my ass, and I got to get this off my chest, is when Nancy Pelosi and a couple other senators and congressmen complained, my office got messed up. They rifled through my files, and complaining about it. And I was like, shut the F up. I mean, you're not somebody who had their business burned down in Kenosha or Portland or any other city in America during the summer of 2020. And to sit there and whine about some paper spread around your office just pisses me the fuck off. That being said, January 6th was, if you were liberal, the end of the world, apparently. And if you have a different political view, you're kind of like, okay, that was a riot. It was stupid. Shouldn't have been happening. But what happened was just that. It was riot. It was out of control. It was not an insurrection. It was not an attempt to overthrow the government. Because if you look at the video images and all the people that showed up, they wanted to take the government and kill a bunch of people. They could have done it. The Capitol Police there did not even have enough rounds to stop everybody, even if they didn't miss.
All right, I'm going to say it. Yeah, I haven't really talked about this subject over the year. It came up multiple times. You might have gotten an eye roll and a shrug from me, and that was it. I think that applying the word riot is hyperbole. This was, and I had several people came to my house to stay because I live in the DC, Beltway. And they came to my house to stay. They were good guys, accountable people. And they went and they participated in the whole political kumbaya. And they came back right as everything started to go south. They didn't even know what was going on when they decided, this has been a good day, come on back. And so we sat down over dinner and beers, and I was like, hey, something's going on over there. Go, yeah, there was something weird happening right when we left, but got on the subway, came back here, joined me for dinner. And we're sitting there. I said, how was it? And they're like, that was really a very heartwarming thing. They said, I didn't know what to, both of them said, I didn't know what to come and expect. Was it going to be angry people yelling? And they said, there were people from all sides. There were people that were clearly Republicans and conservatives and liberals and Democrats. And there were some libertarians and weird people juggling. And, everybody was just kind of showing their colors. And said, it was just like very cordial. Everybody was being so polite. And he was like, I just, both of them were saying, I was so pleasantly surprised, made me feel good. And one of them, it was the first time on the mall, in downtown DC. The other guy had been there several times. And they just were like, yeah, this is really cool. Well, we were, as the evening goes on, we're a little bit caught off guard to say, whoa, look what happened right when you guys left. And what happened was an unarmed, unorganized group of people decided, hey, look at this, it's great. My first time to DC. I'm right here by the, Capitol building. Why don't we go in, see if we can meet some of our representatives, shake hands with those we like, and tell the other people, hey, you're not a good person. And I don't like what you do to this country, and I don't like the way you represent me. And God forbid that they got figuratively slapped around. You know what? If they were literally, slapped, like pop, 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 right? If they had literally been manhandled and slapped, they would all walked away with everything except their pride, and everybody went home. So why some jackass decided he needed to put a bullet in an unarmed woman, and a veteran at that? This wasn't the storming of the Bastille in France. This was a very wonderful, very routine political day, and where all voices were heard. And some people just got a little a little vigorous and a little aggressive and said, hey, let's go tell those people what we think of them. And you're thinking, well, that's all negative. No, I'm kind of like certain that they were also looking to shake hands and get photo ops with people that they liked. And instead, somebody got killed. Right? Just government overreaction on a very normal day.
I want to highlight this comment real quick. Isn't this true? Didn't they open the gates? The officers that were out there open the gates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were
handing out water and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, what the long and the short of it is that the people who are appalled, oh my word, someone disagrees with me. Yeah. But if you had come there and participated, you would have found that the people that disagreed with you, because there were people from every walk of life. So you were guaranteed to be disagreed with there. And they were very civil.
Yeah, that's kind of the weird juxtaposition of it, because you see videos where the police are opening doors. They look like freaking tour guides leading people through the hallways. And in some cases, you see people just taking selfies. They're moving the I forget what they call them, those things that hold the ropes. They're moving them to the side. Nobody's really trashing the place. Hell, we've seen the barracks when things get out of control there. Congress looked in a lot better condition than that when they were done.
No, to hear these guys talk, there was, and I'm not pulling this out of the hat. I mean, there were like, you're thinking, oh, this is all about politics. No, there was gay pride there and flat earthers there. Okay. It was, there was someone to disagree with everyone. Welcome to DC.
Well, I think we can all agree that it didn't help us politically for it to occur. I think the reaction of the left has probably been one of the most dangerous things to come out of 2021. Les, you kind of mentioned that, but I want to expand on that a little bit further. And I've already seen a few comments saying, if this was an insurrection or coup, where were the guns? And that's a great point. If everybody showed up with a gun, this would be an insurrection or a coup. But the legal definition, which can be found in 18 U.S. Code 2383, 4, and 5, for those of you who are interested, I don't think it really supports the legal definition of insurrection. And that's not just me saying it. I've got an article up here from the Hill. The FBI agrees that this wasn't really an insurrection, doesn't fit the legal definition. The Communist News Network, on the other hand, CNN, disagrees. They found 5 people that were charged with weapons offenses and called it an armed insurrection. Of course, they use statements like from the chief of police from D.C., who said that they had bats and pepper spray and stuff like that. But you're not going to enact political change with bats and pepper spray. Political power comes from the barrel of a gun. I'm not a fan of the man who said that, but he's right. And that was Chairman Mao Zedong of the Chinese Communist Party. That's how you enact political change. So I agree with that statement. Where were the guns? The problem with this has been the reaction from the left. And authoritarian regimes have always had some kind of cataclysmic event to launch single-party rule. In Nazi Germany, it was the burning of the Reichstag. Hitler was able to consolidate power by blaming the communists and essentially purge the communists from Germany. In Soviet Russia, it was the Kornilov affair that saw the end of Kerensky's provisional government. And again, a year later, 1918, they were able to purge other left-wing parties after the German ambassador was assassinated. So they latched onto this event, and you're going to be hearing about it until the next election. And that's really where the danger comes from. They're going to beat this dead horse, and they've got an effective case because, there was the politicians that were directly affected by this, and the deep state politicians who believe they're on the right side of history. So I think we're going to hear about this, and I think the left's reaction, which I've got about a page and a half of notes of why it's so dangerous. I hope we get into some of this later on, but I think that's probably more than the event itself is the left's reaction. And now we see the Soviet style congressional hearings and things like that probably aren't going to go anywhere, but they're going to score political points through this process. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Understood, but the bottom line is this: how many politicians or their staff were injured? 0? Oh, absolutely 0, absolutely none. But they'll tell you, but I was hiding under my table. Yeah, you probably were, because your constituents wanted to talk to you. And you shouldn't be a politician. If you're afraid of your own constituents, do the right thing. Resign.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely agree. I think there needs to be a healthy fear of us by government officials. They have to remember they're our subordinates, not our superiors. They work for us, and that's why we have a check and balance called the Second Amendment. And I don't think that the left-wing politicians have a healthy fear. I think they've stacked the deep state to the point where it's almost irrecoverable without, an extended period of Republican rule.
Well, I think this did rattle their cage. By the way, no one was exercising their Second Amendment there. The people, as to who was carrying firearms, I've heard, and bats, I've heard everything from yes, but it was Antifa, all the way to, okay, these were guys who had legitimate concealed carry permits that came into DC without reciprocity. It's literally we don't have reciprocity. You shouldn't do that here, because while it's legal where you come from, we don't have reciprocity. This is a paperwork. This is an error of paperwork, or a crime of not having the right paperwork. But the bats and all this other stuff, they were radical groups like Antifa. Now, and that's if it's to be believed. All this is hearsay. What you really had on January 6th were people exercising their First Amendment rights of expression. And again, it wasn't unique to one side. If you talk to anybody who was actually there, right, and doesn't, well, I don't care if they have a political agenda or not, speak to someone who isn't a politician. Ooh, my dirty, unwashed peasants wanted to talk to me. I was so scared I hid under the table. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. These are people that want to talk to their representatives, and those representatives should have marched out of that building in good order and made themselves available to their constituents. But instead they hid inside. Cowardly, pathetic.
Hey, don't forget, Doc, AOC was fearing for her life, and she was in a completely different building, not even there.
Well, she was also crying at the border, at the fence. Turned out to be a parking lot in like New Jersey or something, right?
Hey, I want to expound on what Chad was saying, because I get where he's going with that, and I tend to agree. So, yeah, you see, I would argue that, this was a mostly peaceful protest, right? You got hundreds of people lining the Capitol, and all they're doing is chanting USA and waving American flags and everything else. But, obviously there was some people that broke into Nancy Pelosi's office and, did some other stuff. Obviously one of the individuals was killed by law enforcement in there. So there were some folks that were up to no good. But I want to bring up Mark Levin. I was listening to him the other day, and he's like, you take the narrative that the left's pushing on this. What are these people being charged with? They're being charged with criminal trespass. None of them are being charged with weapons offenses. None of them are being charged with like seditions or anything like that. It's criminal trespass, right? I mean, come on. But to go back to what Chad's saying, I mean, what's the narrative, right? Like the vast majority of folks are not, on the left, they're not on the right, they're in the middle, right? We have to have the moral high ground in order to win elections. And we had that because guess what? The left spent the whole summer rioting. There were freaking Republicans and conservatives setting fire to buildings when all that was going on. And we had the moral high ground, and then this happens, and even as minute as it was, this is what they're taking and running with. They impeached the sitting president over this, right? So again, I wanted to go back to we need to hold the moral high ground because we're starting to gain that back. And look what happened. Now, Les, Doc, you guys have a Republican governor now. Thank God you have a Republican legislator, which was, you guys have been communists for how many years?
5
years,
Yeah, it's not uncommon for Virginia to swing back and forth. It very rarely does one party get back-to-back elections.
So in any event, where I feel like we're starting to get it back, but I want to kick it over to Bruce because he just joined late, and I'm sure he's got something to say about this. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, so I kind of caught the tail end of what Chad was saying, and I bet he and I are somewhat on the same page. In some ways, it's sort of well. Let me just say this. This is my thought on it. I believe that that this is overall a good thing. I think that people in this country, people I'm referring to politicians, get real comfortable and they get this fake sense of security that the police will protect them. And no matter what they do, no matter what they say, that physical violence and the threat thereof is never a possibility and they can't even imagine it. And that's not the way our system of government was set up to happen. And in the early days, that's certainly not how it was. If you get out of control and you aren't listening to the American people, there is a last resort there. No one likes to talk about it, but it's clearly written into the Second Amendment, whether you're a foreign threat or domestic threat. And I think that they got nothing more than a taste of reality during that event, where unarmed people simply went past law enforcement, the small amount that they had there, and could have easily, even armed with nothing, easily have taken over the entire building had they wanted to. That's unarmed. That's doing nothing more than using numbers of bodies pressing past law enforcement and convincing law enforcement, we outnumber you 300 to 1. What are you really going to do? You want to start shooting us? And now we've got a reason to turn on you? I think that every country has seen this somewhere in the past. Every actual coup that's out there is violent and ugly, and it's a huge number of people that then convince whatever small military or police force is there protecting whatever leaders are in charge. Hey, we greatly outnumber you. You've got a family back home. How do you want to deal with this? Do you really have the numbers to take us all on? Some of those are going to be sympathetic to the views of the people. And I think we saw that with some of the law enforcement there as well. People always have this fantasy in this country of law enforcement going around and kicking in all the doors and taking up all the guns or whatever the case may be. Yeah, there's a few guys that may try that, but there's a lot of guys that will stand up and say, no, this isn't right. We're not going to do this. Same thing with the military. It doesn't, you can only order them to do what you can order them to do. They won't always follow every order if it's a ridiculous order, especially when we're talking about a private police force, right? I just think that what I'm trying to say here, and I'll wrap it up here, is that I think that our politicians, Congress, both the Republicans and Democrats alike, got a feeling for the pulse of the people and realized for the first time in their life, not the first time in our history, but the first time in their life, that if they don't do what the American people want them to do and put them there to do, it can boil over. And it can boil over into a much worse scenario than what they saw a year ago on June 6th. They're thinking that now. And I think that they all probably looked out a couple of days after that and saw a little chain link fence that they put up around there. And they realized this is the best we can do. We better remember who we're answering to.
Yeah, you might be right there, Bruce. I think some probably did come to that conclusion, because you see many legislators like calling for an end to the mandates and opening up and going back to normal. And you see others going the opposite direction, wanting to lock things down even harder, and I think both sides, there's two reactions to it, equal and opposite. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the future.
Yeah, I want to touch on that real quick. Like I started out my rant in the beginning. I think this is kind of going in some dangerous directions, and one of the directions I see this going is they're using January 6th to purge the military. I don't know if you guys remember, but I've got an article pulled up right here. I'll share my screen so you guys can see what I'm looking at as well. CBS News, no conservative media source, but they want to root out extremism in the military. And the problem with articles like this is if you read it, this happened right after January 6th. They only talk about right-wing extremism. They don't talk about left-wing extremism. They don't talk about, BLM or Antifa, because to them, anybody to the right of Karl Marx is an extremist. So stuff like this, like January 6th, there's negative connotations. There's a negative point of view. And I don't have much faith in the average American citizen to really understand and do their research into topics like this, and they just see what they hear on the news and they run with it. So now you've got the Democrat Party looking to purge the military of what they consider extreme. Well, that could just be a Trump supporter in their eyes. I don't trust the Democrat Party to define what extremism is, because they can't even address their own extremism. So stuff like this is extremely dangerous, absolutely extremely dangerous. And they're using the vaccine mandate to purge the military. Now they're kicking people out because they're anti-vaxxers. They must be right-wing. Let's kick them out of the military. Okay, we saw this in the Soviet Union, and we saw how that went. And that the COVID thing is all politicized now because the Democrat-run states allowed protests for George Floyd, but shut everything else down. So we know it's about politics. It's not about health, and it's not about science. It's about politics. So my point is, this is going in a very dangerous direction, and we have one party in power right now, and they're going to start using this to gain more power any way they can, and purging the military is one way they're going to do it.
Oh, I think that purge has been going on for about a decade, so it might be accelerated, but it's something that's been happening anyways.
Agreed, or at least it's attempted. And I don't want to put that to the side, though. I think you're right, Chad. I think that there is an effort at the senior levels. I think it's interesting that the article you shared with us said that this effort failed. I think it does, as Brent has mentioned on several different shows, that that you're going to continue to fail because the military, particularly down at the junior ranks and particularly in the combat arms formations, is the antithesis to the woke Marxism. It's just absolutely rejected there. John Lovell from Warrior Poet Society was on an interview recently where he said, yeah, the problem with woke Marxists coming into the military is they hate the United States of America. And they won't come in because they don't want to ever be caught in a situation where they might have to defend it. So I think as insidious as that is, that they're attacking, the values and trying to, kick people out of the military with nationalistic values, patriotic values, as insidious as that is, it's still isolated to, as we're saying, the military, which is what, 1/3% of the United States populace. Like it's certainly not even a whole percent. And so that's, again, I don't mean to make light of it, but I'd say the bigger thing with January 6th and the rhetoric I've heard from the Marxist news media has been to attack the common person, the common citizens' security and their right and their First Amendment rights, their right to express themselves, the right to mass, the right to say, hey, government, we disagree with you. And this is what the narrative is doing. Not just the narrative of January 6th, but indeed the narrative of COVID is you don't have the right to express yourself. You are denied your First Amendment rights. And if you ever question that, look how we are, look how we are prosecuting and persecuting anyone who attempts to disagree with us. So I think that's maybe the far more reaching and the far more insidious consequence of the left's narrative here.
Good point. Unfortunately, I'm not as prepared as Chad is, but I have seen two interesting things recently. Today, over on Tim Pool's show, he was doing a thing of where people are getting their news from. And it was very interesting in the fact that the vast majority of people, or as far as watching what they consider to be a news source, is watching the Joe Rogan Experience. The next 5 levels under that were Fox News shows. And down at the bottom with the lowest percentage was CNN and MSNBC. And whether you agree with those channels or not, the point of what it's saying is people are rejecting the mainstream media. So they're basically rejecting the narrative. So I think a lot of the BS of the people who are in power and that want to keep you down is being rejected by people. And I think people are seeing through the BS.
Yeah, that's sort of your silent majority, right? You know, that tip they're not out there and they're not necessarily super vocal, but when you look at stats like news stats, and I saw a very similar rating where they were rating the sort of top news guys of the year, and Joe Rogan was at the top. Fox had
quite a wide margin too.
By a wide margin, and he's not on TV. This is the thing people have to understand is, and corporations have been looking at this for years. I know my company, man, 15 years ago, you're not allowed on Facebook. You're not allowed on internet. Don't be wasting corporate time, blah, 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 blah. And then instantly, overnight, go like our Facebook page. Access it through your work computer. We want you interacting on Facebook. Someone went to all the old corporate guys and said, you're getting it wrong and you're getting left behind. We want people interactive on the internet. The old ways of thinking. I mean, I remember when they were like, don't be on your cell phone. And now they're like, you didn't just get my text? They want that instant communication back and forth because everyone's adopted, because the way we communicate is changing, and it's changing in the news, obviously, as well. And you see that in the numbers. When Joe Rogan's got more viewers than CNN, what the hell? That is a change that I would have never thought I would have seen in my lifetime. If you would have asked me that even 10 years ago, I would have said, no way, man. They're in every airport around the country. But yet people are still rejecting them, and not rejecting them. They're going out of their way to find other news sources and look at other views. And it's a lot of people, and those people will go out and vote. And I think we're going to see obviously, I don't know if you guys have been really following politics much, but for the last year, no Democrat, I haven't seen a single one that with a straight face can say, we're going to hold power in 2022 when the midterm elections come through. They don't even seem to even attempt to defend that. Their entire position now seems to be, we need to pass stuff right now because we're going to be dead for the next 4 years politically. And I think that, I don't know if that's maybe the wrong assumption to make. Like as a football team, you never want them to think that they're going to win, because then they go out there and maybe they half play. You want them to think that the game will still be tight, even though they're favored by 40 points. And you want them to go out there and play their hearts out and win by those 40 points. And let's do the same thing in the next election. But I think that the pendulum always swings. And I know that Doc and Lark, unless you mentioned that, your state swings party to party. They never go more than 4 years. And then we see that in presidential elections too, right? I mean, when is the last time we saw 2 Republicans or 2 Democrats win back to back? I can't remember when we had 2 Democrat presidents 8 years and 8 years, or 2 Republican presidents 8 years and 8 years. It's been quite a while back. So it swings in this country politically too on the federal level. And I think that we're gonna see that. And I think that that's all sort of, it's the pendulum is swinging in our favor, I guess I should say. Let's keep up that momentum. And I think that we're seeing that even when you break it down on small levels, whether it's local or you're looking at new news outlets like Joe Rogan.
Hey, Joe Rogan's a good piece of gear, man. You know, I mean, he is not on the right whatsoever. He's, I guess, in the middle. But goddamn, look how he went after CNN when they tried to lie about him. You gotta respect the hell out of that.
He wore that Gupta guy. I mean, he wore that guy out. I felt bad for the guy. If I would have been like a backstage guy, I'd have been like, Joe, hold on, man. This is a fragile individual here. You're wearing him out. Joe took it personally, right? And he went after the guy, and he should have, because they lied about him. And we need a whole lot more of that on individual levels, calling out anytime someone lies about something to create some type of false narrative. I don't care if it's on the right or the left. I get so frustrated seeing sometimes news on the right. It's not that often, but I do see it. We'll say Fox, for example. And I'm like, that's not exactly true. The way you're spinning that, you went a little too far with that. And that kind of upsets me, because it makes it hard to defend those people that you're viewing, right? Because I like to think that I'm a person of integrity when it comes to stuff like that. And I know that you guys do too. And it's like, if I'm going to quote somebody, they need to have their act together. And I do think that Rogan speaks from the heart. And if I'm not mistaken, he started out much more of a leftist than one of those in the center, and he's swung that way, right?
Yeah, he's kind of like Tim Pool was. Tim Pool will admit he was a hard lefty and stuff, and he claims to be centrist now. You know, and the fact that the right accuse him of being lefty and the lefties accuse him of being a righty, I guess that's truly a centrist. But I think a lot of guys that you're seeing that are becoming popular online started out on the left and are coming more to the right. I'm not saying they're completely switching sides, but they're definitely saying some of their previous positions, you know, are not tenable.
Hell, I'll even say, you know, I'm not even remotely a fan of Bill Maher, but at least from time to time, he speaks truth. You know, he really does.
He gets it right sometimes. He does get it right sometimes.
Yeah, I see it.
Cool thing about Bill Maher is he's always willing to defend his positions. You know, he doesn't have to grasp at straws to back up what he believes.
Yeah, I see that Martin L says, "Can we really trust our news services anymore?" Martin, could we ever?
Never could.
The thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you go back to when I was a kid and times before me, where you had the three news channels on TV, and all of us that are my age remember that because we were the remote control back then. And Mom would say, "Go change the TV from 5 to 11 or from 11 to 2." That's what we did as kids. All three of those news channels and all of those old respected news guys, they all told the same narrative. They didn't disagree with one another. And it was typically a leftist narrative. It was an anti-Vietnam War narrative. If you research your history, you guys will confirm that. And now all of a sudden we have channels that it probably started with AM radio and with Fox and with old guys like Rush that started to disagree with that. AM radio was dead and is dead. If it wasn't for, no one can go to AM radio to listen to music. It sounds terrible. The only thing AM radio is good for is listening to somebody's voice ran on. You can listen to a voice on AM radio. Therefore, talk shows became popular. It's the only reason it's even out there. If it wasn't for talk shows, there would be no AM radio. There would be no need for it. And they're super popular. And they're so popular that even today, you have leftists trying to go out and control and regulate AM radio because they don't like that the right-wingers are getting all their views out there on AM radio. A lot of people listen to that. I do in my downtime. I'll turn it on the vehicle and listen to what's going on. So you had AM radio, then you had Fox News that says, "Hey, maybe we can take all these views and we can have a dissenting opinion and we'll create a news channel," which is now the biggest news channel, I believe, in the United States. It beats MSNBC, CNN combined. I guess the point is this: now you have different news agencies with different opinions. You can't listen to just one of them. If all you're listening to is Fox News, you're not going to get the news. I listen to Fox. I listen to MSNBC. I listen to CNN. I look at Yahoo News. I listen to AM radio. I might pick up a little Breitbart. I might get Drudge. I think that gives me a very good, well-rounded view of what's going on. Not only do I have a few channels there that are sort of catering to my views and agree with my views in the direction that I believe, but I'm also looking at what the other side thinks. And I can then look at the other side. I probably spend more time watching the other side than I do my own views anyway, particularly MSNBC and CNN, because that lets me have an insight as to those people who have a differing opinion from me. And I can make a decision. Does this make sense? Are they onto something, or are they just cuckoo and completely crazy? And is that then reaffirms my views of what I already felt. I like to talk to someone and get a dissenting opinion. I got a guy I work with that does this all the time. He does a great job of playing devil's advocate. And I always say, "Steve, what do you think about this?" And he'll, it may be a completely differing opinion from mine, but he then reinforces the belief that I'm like, "Yeah, you're a nut job, Steve. And I'm absolutely right in what I was thinking." And I can walk away going, "Okay, I've heard the other side of the argument here. And I feel even more convinced that the way that I view is the way to go." So in terms of being able to trust different news agencies, don't trust any one of them. Watch them all. Make your own opinion based on your own life experiences. Every intelligent American out there, every one of you that are viewing this, you should be able to do that.
I want to comment on a point you made about Vietnam. So I had a good buddy of mine that was a Vietnam veteran, and I remember him telling me one time, he said, "I blame Walter Cronkite for losing the Vietnam War." I said, "Oh, really? Why do you say that?" He said, "Because he, quote, was the most trusted voice in American news." He said, after the Tet Offensive, the Tet Offensive, we annihilated the enemy. The Viet Cong almost essentially were completely wiped out. It was a major strategic victory for us, right? But Walter Cronkite goes on air, and what does he say? He doesn't say, "No, this is a major strategic victory. The Viet Cong almost ceased to exist." He says, "At this point, I cannot see that this war can be won." And then what does, Joe Blow American think at that point going forward?
Yeah. Could you imagine if Walter Cronkite, could you imagine if he had done that at Battle of the Bulge? Because no one expected the Germans at the end of 1944 could mass 250,000 people into an offensive at the Battle of the Bulge, but they did, and they damn near pulled it off. So could you imagine Walter Cronkite getting on to American television, American newspapers and radio and saying, the war against the Nazis is lost. We must pull back now. I mean, and the pull that he had with the people. So if you don't mind me jumping in here, I'll say, Bruce, the dynamic that you just described, people hear from a media source and news media source. And then they turn to people that they know and they discuss it. And then they seek out people that they know, that they trust their opinion, and they discuss it. That model of digesting the news was discovered. I mean, there were studies on this in the 40s and the 50s when they really codified that model and said, well, this is what the American people seem to be doing. And so as much as news is changing in its media, our human interaction seems to be staying fairly consistent. And so I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I come from a journalist family. It's an odd one where you either go for 100 years in my family, you either join the military or you became a news journalist. And it makes a weird dynamic around Thanksgiving, I'll promise you that. But nonetheless, what happened in the 1980s, and it really made my grandfather start to get out of it, and we started getting out of it in the 1980s. There are two things that happened. One thing that happened was that the news media started pushing that, I'm unbiased. And my grandfather, who, by the way, is in the Hall of Fame in print journalism. But anyway, what he said was, no, we all have our biases. We're all human. And as soon as you start to claim that you don't have your biases, what you've just told me is you're going to use your biases now. You're going to let that weigh. Because what you have to do as a journalist, his point is to recognize your biases, not to claim that they don't exist, but instead to recognize them, even publicly. And so as soon as that happened, he went, whoa, where are we going? Where are we going? We're going back to yellow press of the 1890s. Is that what we're going to do here? And then the second thing, of course, was in the 1980s, all of the news broadcast medias, TV news at that time, were purchased by entertainment companies and moved to entertainment divisions. And that's when he said, okay, this is a wrap. I'm retiring. You guys do what you're going to do. And that's when we got out. And so many of the things that he predicted, I've watched over the last 30, 40 years come true. So very sad. But still, I think it is how we digest information, we share information, is we still get this from medias, whether we trust the media or not. It is good. Like Bruce said, go find your nemesis. Go find the Communist News Network. Listen to them. Listen to what they have to say. Not that you're necessarily listening for perspective or truth, but you should understand what their narratives are. So there's that.
It's a military technique, right? Do you have it? Do you have an enemy and you don't watch anything that they're doing? You don't listen to anything that they're doing? Hell no. You send spies out there and you find out every time they move a pickup truck around. You want to know because you want to know what they're up to. You want to see what their views are. Understanding your enemy, even if it's in the news and it's views that you don't agree with, or if it's just your neighbor across the street and someone that has completely different political views than you, that's important. That's an important thing to do.
Yeah, Brent, I think this wound up becoming more about the news media coverage of January 6th than January 6th.
Obviously.
Well, that's really what January 6th was about. Think about it. The events in January 6th, but in 6 hours were over. And that's probably being overly generous in time. We hear nothing. Go ahead.
I think the question now is whether, and I open this to the panel, whether we condemn it or not. I think the bottom line for, Brent kind of touched on this a little bit. There is a negative connotation to this, and we're seeing it in the news media. But as for me personally, I'm to the point where as long as the left fails to condemn Antifa or BLM violence, I'm not going to condemn it when my side does it. So that's where I stand. I'd like to know the rest of your opinions on that.
It's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up like that, Chad. I'm glad you framed it like that, because that is really the elephant in the room, right? And I think that's something that all the news medias are being kind of forced to address as well. If you've been watching CNN lately, it's all they're talking about is January 6th. And if you watch Fox News, it's like it never happened. So the truth has got to be somewhere in the middle, right? Or somewhere, right? Like, I guess those are going to be the two extremes if you're talking about news medias. So I think for me, I think I would say this. I hear where you're coming from, Chad. I do hear where you're coming from. I think for me, I would say two things. I would condemn any violence against the police officers and law enforcement guys there, even including just pepper spray, heck, even including just vulgar language. I don't think you should do it. I don't think it's necessary. It's not how I was brought up when it comes to talking to law enforcement guys, even if they're doing something that you don't like them doing. It's not necessary. If you show up there unarmed, then there should be no violence. And I think I'll condemn the violent part on that. The disobeying whatever orders that they gave to not enter certain rooms. You shouldn't do that. Should that mean that you get the death sentence? No, it shouldn't. But it should mean you should listen to them and do what you do. I think that the exact same, the outcome that they wanted to have, I think could have happened without disobeying any law enforcement orders. I think simply showing up on those numbers and the next day, law enforcement going in and they're debriefing and go, we just about got over freaking ran. This thing could have got sideways real quick. That might have been the message to send. But I think that's where I stand on it. For all the other protesters that were there that weren't violent when they went in, that weren't violent towards law enforcement officers, that weren't doing teenagery things, I guess is to say, good on them. I have no problem with that. And I don't say that as someone that was a Trump supporter. I would say the same thing if it was those from the left. All those BLM protests we've got, or Greenpeace protests, or whatever the heck pro-commie protests there are out there, Antifa protests, as long as you're not violent, man, have at it. What do I care? Don't block my street when I'm going to work, number one. All right?
No, but I think that's
going to get to work. But if you want to go out there and express your freedom of speech and you want to protest sea turtles, whatever it is, knock yourself out.
No, I think that's just it. I mean, the fact is that, for all the people, January 6th was a this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, okay, you know what? You want to get me to agree to that kind of nonsense because I don't agree to that. But if you want me to agree to that, then, at least be fair, at least be, equal about it. At least turn to, the group BLM and Antifa and say, you guys can't do this anymore. Because sure, we understand 97% of you are not violent, but 3% of you came here with violence in your heart and violence in your mind. You intend to do violence, be it violence against property, be it non-lethal violence, doesn't matter. You came here to do violence, 3% of you. So if that's the case, that's the case. And clearly, I don't know what side, I don't know if they were marching for Save the Elephants when the people that broke into the Capitol building and, disheveled desks of paperwork. But that's still wrong to do. You don't go into somebody else's place of work and just start, vandalizing it. You don't do that. It's wrong. So again, if we want to say this, then we have to be consistent. And I know we're talking media. I know we're talking January 6th, but there is the incident in the media that the media loved and followed. And that was the Rittenhouse trial. And I think once again, it was a very similar thing. January 6th was the Marxist left saying you cannot exercise your First Amendment rights unless you agree with us. And the Rittenhouse trial in 2021 was that same group saying you cannot use your Second Amendment rights unless you agree with us. And in both cases, well, they were disproven.
That's a great segue on something we didn't even address as an initial topic. So I'm going to capitalize on that, Doc, and let's pick up on that. Actually,
right.
Hold on. Before we get on that, I just want to say my final thing. Hey, I frown on all all crime. Okay. As much as I love seeing American flags and the cheers of USA going on outside the Capitol building, on the steps of the Capitol building, I definitely would not like to see that same picture with a bunch of Antifa, freaking BLM, and God knows whoever else was participating in those riots all summer long, doing the exact same thing. So with that being said, I would have rather that they were at some sort of perimeter outside the Capitol doing the exact same chanting and flag waving. So, I condemn all acts of, breaking the law in that regards. What really irks me about this whole January 6th thing is they have literally gone and hunted down virtually everybody that was there, right? How many people have been prosecuted for the riots that burnt down buildings, killed people? Who is the police chief that got murdered on camera? Has his murderer been captured? I don't know. I haven't heard anything in the news about it. But he was by no means the only person that was murdered in that. So it drives me nuts that they've hunted these people down like dogs, every single one of them, and are prosecuting them to the full extent, which is criminal trespass. Sure as hell isn't freaking inciting a riot or freaking weapons offenses like the media will lead you to believe. But at least they're doing this, and they didn't go after anybody in these other instances all summer long that actually caused a lot more chaos. Let's move on to Rittenhouse, because I think we beat the bush on this one, and we're almost at an hour.
Les, you want to take that?
Okay. Well, I don't think it'll surprise anybody here that all five of us agree that Kyle Rittenhouse engaged in self-defense. It's clear cut. The fact that there even had to be a trial is wrong. I mean, that's straight up. On the level of law, it's like, okay, you have to investigate a shooting, but that investigation should have revealed pretty quickly that the kid did nothing wrong. And on a personal level, let's see, he off 2 criminals and mortally wounded or permanently maimed a pedo. Darn, karma's a bitch.
Well, that, and I'll say this, again, we've closed January 6th, but we all know there was one fatality. I just read, it's probably, I don't know when was the Kyle Rittenhouse decision, but anyway, about that time, the British newspaper, The Independent, released an article comparing, or discussing Antifa and BLM. You can look it up, and where they claim that there are, from their records, from their, journalistic records, there were at least, they said, a minimum of 25 fatalities in BLM and Antifa demonstrations. Okay. And of course, it wasn't one day. Those are stretched over, several years. But nonetheless, a minimum of 25 fatalities. So you're saying, hey, hold on. BLM and Antifa are literally killing people. And the police chief that you talked about. And what are we doing? Oh, but one of their intended victims fought back. We've had enough of that. Well, we better drag his butt into court and try to throw him in a hole for the rest of his life. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. And for me, the outcome of that is multiple. There's multiple vindications. First off, there's the obvious, the vindication of self-defense. But there was also the vindication of a community, a militia by any other name. You call it whatever you want. Let's all call it a whoosy what's it. Doesn't matter. A rose is a rose is a rose by any name. And the fact is that they formed into militias to clean up their neighborhood, to put out fires of burning buildings and burning dumpsters, to render first aid, to help the police, and to protect their properties. And when one of them was targeted for death, he defended himself with the use of lethal force. So this is a vindication of self-defense, a vindication of private citizen militias, and frankly, a vindication of the AR-15. It's just a fantastic tool for all of those purposes above.
Yeah, thankfully the verdict went the way it did. I'm sure if it went the opposite direction, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. Kind of on this topic, I'm kind of curious. What do you guys think about the state laws that the state anti-militia laws? I know Texas is kind of big on that. If you look at their, I think it's government code or something like that. All 50 states pretty much have anti-militia laws. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
Well, I'll take that, Chad, and I like the little transition that Doc made as well, because it was going to kind of be my point. I agree with you guys. I don't need to beat that dead horse anymore. Good for the Second Amendment. Way to go, Kyle. I was on his side from the very beginning, and the more evidence that came out, the more I felt that he was good to go. The AR-15. What some would call a piece of shit, cheap $500 AR-15 with a sight on top of it, went to work. One magazine of ammunition went to work. It was employed by someone that was fairly untrained by our standards. I think he went out a couple of times and shot some tin cans in the back of a field and went to work. Now imagine if he was trained, it was a quality weapon, it's quality optic, chest rig with multiple magazines of ammunition, what someone can accomplish. I'll let you guys ponder that. Be careful about belittling the little man like 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, who doesn't have any money. He's working a small job, and he's got the cheap AR-15 that he bought because it looked cool at the pawn shop, and then a magazine of ammunition, whatever the cheapest was he could get in the store, and a sight sight. Went to work, and he got it done. So don't underestimate a person when they've got the mental will, even if they don't necessarily have the shiniest tools in the toolbox to accomplish the job. He still got done what he needed to get done. That was kind of what I wanted to say on that. And Chad, in terms of the militia issue, I'm almost not completely surprised, because if you think about it, this is the big thing that bugs everybody with the militia, and it bugs people that don't follow the Second Amendment and don't understand the founding of our country also, which may be the average Joe, maybe in many ways the average mom that's out there, the average intelligent female that's just not spun up on this. It's not in any government's best interest, from your local podunk town city hall all the way up to the president, to encourage militias and the forming of militias, of free people taking up arms to defend the country from domestic issues. It's never in their best interest. No country does it. I don't think you can name a one. They hate it. Any country that comes to power, they try to disarm those people and jail those people and get rid of those people. Military training on a civilian level is banned in most countries. There are countries that it's illegal to wear camouflage, whether it be the current trend of the day or not. They don't want paramilitary people out there thinking on their own. They have a military that they control. That's how that they want that formed. This country is very unique in that we are very different from that. And we're only different from that because we fought that government and that military to become free ourselves, being the greatest government military in the world, I believe at the time, the King of England. And we strangely, even though we shouldn't have and didn't expect to, won that. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves with this country laid in our lap going, what the hell do we do here? And you can look at all of our founding fathers and all of their discussions and writings and see what kind of chaos it was when they had those discussions, and it came out to be where we are. It's no different today. Just because we put a government in place, our founding fathers warned over this time and time again. We can't be trusted as your government. And they put checks and balances in place to keep the government from getting too big. And they knew the government was going to encroach on those every opportunity that they had. And here we are 200 something years later, and they're still encroaching on those. We're still fighting those battles. It'll never end. You're never, ever, ever going to have a president and a Congress that go, we trust the American people to make the best decisions. They don't do that. What is that? I don't know the saying, Chad. You'll know it, and you'll know who said this. But it was something like power corrupts all. Anyway, I'll leave you guys with
absolute that. Power corrupts absolute. Yeah, you're right.
I'll leave you with that. That's been true. That's the saying probably goes back to the Roman times, and it's just as true today as it was then.
Hey, Chad, quick question. Can you give an example of those laws? Because I know you said they are in all 50 states. But going up and training with one Shepherd, I've been to multiple joint FTXs with the Missouri Militia, and I've heard Doc say multiple times that the Missouri Militia is actually a state sponsored.
Yes.
Sanctions.
Yeah, it falls under the category of organized militia. I'm talking about unorganized militia. And I think you and I encountered this problem. I won't give too much detail, but I know you and I were talking about going down to the border and doing some stuff down there a long time ago. But that never manifested because of the anti-militia laws in the state of Texas. Surprisingly, in the state of Texas, I don't know if you guys can give me a minute, I can look it up real quick. When Doc mentioned the word militia, it just kind of triggered something in my head that I've read articles recently where all 50 states have anti-militia laws, and it's not really encouraged. So that's why I asked the question, just to kind of get your opinion on it.
Hey, so I know intriguing minds are going to ask, so I have to clarify this. So before the group called Minutemen, there was an organization called, I think it was Rescue Ranch, and they went down there and they set up military-style operations where they patrolled and all this other stuff. Chad and I were just like, hey, let's go down to the border and let's set up an OP and watch, and let's call in illegal migrants coming across to the border.
Observe and report only.
Yes. So we may be wearing camouflage and things of that nature. So, but it was going to be observe and report from an LPOP.
Well, that's one of our topics tonight is the border, right? So this is already going to segue into that. But I will say, catching other things while I'm trying to speak. All right. So what I was going to say was, of course, I'm deeply offended by any tyrannical government that wants to overreach its power and tell us not to, as citizens, not to form together in militia. Militia have so many roles: filling sandbags in a flood, helping dig out people out of their house after a tornado or a hurricane, rescuing people out of the way of forest fires. There's just one thing after another, and any militia worth its salt is going to admit that humanitarian crisis due to natural disaster is overwhelmingly its work, right? But that said, you also have community defense against riots that we saw in Kenosha. That was a perfect use of a militia. Militia have, in depending on how you're going to define it, but at least in the two civil wars that we've had, militia have absolutely played a critical role in the success of the outcome of that war. And militia manifests itself even in private entities. The largest militia air force right now is bigger than the Flying Tigers or the Lafayette Escadrille of World War I or the Flying Tigers of World War II or Air America of Vietnam. Right now, we have an OP-4 Air that has, Les can tell you, I think it has something like 130, 140 jet fighter aircraft. And this is a privately owned corporation. Well, what the hell is that if it's not a militia? But it has a contract to be OP-4 with, the Air Force and the Navy. I don't give a rat's ass. Lots of militia have contracts, and they do good work. So, of course, though I've never belonged, well, that is a lie. I was going to say I've never belonged to an organized militia. That is not true. I served in Iraq under MPRI as a uniformed armed militiaman. I was an advisor to the Iraqi infantry battalions. This was a Department of State sanctioned position, and it was supported directly by the Department of Defense. So I was a militiaman. Some people say, oh, you're a mercenary. You were a contractor. A lot of them started wearing later USV, United States Volunteer. And you know that if you know your history, because Teddy Roosevelt was a Rough Rider militiaman who was again deployed to another foreign war and distinguished himself and the Rough Riders there. So the militia has a very proud, and I admit, it has some dark chapters to it. It certainly does. But the militia has a very proud service, and any tyrant that needs to say, oh, well, the militia shouldn't exist. You need to live in fear of that person. You need to ostracize that person. That person needs to go. That's how I feel about the militia. And who better to watch our border? The militia needs to be there.
Yeah, I'd say, or educate that person. You know, I think that the term militia has been perverted, like many of our words have. And the media pushes
like
that
the word patriot.
Yeah, that's the latest one, right? You could go on and on and on, but yes, words get perverted. But I think that there is also a point that you can, rather than concede that perversion, you can stop it and you can turn it around. And that's exactly what Doc is touching on when he's talking about going out and doing work during disasters and disaster areas. You show up in a town and you're handing out water and you're helping the old lady get her dog out of the basement. And she goes, "Who are you guys?" And you go, "Well, we're with the militia, whatever militia it is." Well, you just changed someone's opinion there. But I thought, no. You've been told wrong. Where did you get that from? CNN, MSNBC? No, that's not what we're doing. We're not here to overthrow the government. We're here to rescue your dog. And we're the only people that are here to help you with that. You want to wait on the government to do that? Yeah, they're 3 days out. They're busy doing other things. We're here now. That's how you sort of, what is it, the old win hearts and minds, the old Vietnam thing. You got to do that. And then all of a sudden, because people believe their lying eyes, people believe what they see, and they will defend you. They'll go, no. Those guys you're bad mouthing, they saved my dog. Those guys you're bad mouthing, they helped get my husband's truck out of the garage that had a tree on top of it during the last hurricane that we had, or whatever the case may be. You got to get out there, and seeing is believing, and that's way better than anything anybody hears secondhand on the news.
Yeah, I've always said one of the big problems militia has is like their sheriffs and leaders never call them out. You know, and that when there's a problem, be it natural disaster, missing kid, lost dog, whatever, you know, the sheriff doesn't call the militia out when he needs lots of manpower. And I think that's a mistake, because I would go a long way towards changing perceptions.
Here in Virginia, I'm very glad to say that under Ralph Northam, who is now, deposed, thank God, the king is gone. What happened in response to him was that the Virginia county militias all started up. This was literally county governments and county sheriffs that came and formed and authorized militia groups. And I've had the rare pleasure of working with them, with several of the counties out here in Virginia. And I got to tell you, just some stellar guys, just stellar people. And it was really neat because they have such different views. You know, one of the counties was very, like a lot of veterans in it, and specifically infantry veterans, combat arms veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. And so they said, yeah, we're the kinetic group. But they pointed out to this other group that was there, and they're like, yeah, and in our county, it was the sheriffs that stood us up. So we are really more police oriented and helping them. And then they pointed out that two of the counties in their area that didn't come train with us, their militia didn't come. And it wasn't because they were upset or anything. It's just they said, look, you guys go do that. We need the kinetic guys. We need the law enforcement, guys to back up law enforcement. But what we are is we're here to back up the ambulance and the fire. Like, we're literally here for first aid and, logistical support and to feed the troops and all this stuff. And that's what they wanted to be. They formed a militia. That's a special service battalion is what it is. And I'm like, damn, that is so cool. Oh, who was it I was talking to? God, was that West Virginia or Oregon? Somebody, I was in a conversation about 2 years ago in email, and they stood up an engineer, a combat engineer battalion or combat engineer company as a militia. Coolest thing ever. I was like, yeah, spot on.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I'm glad to hear that Bravo Company, One Shepherd. I think you guys did an FTX with a local militia out there in the last one.
Yeah, that's sure cool. Did. Squared away guys.
I wish I could have been there for that one. So I am planning on doing at least one Bravo Company this year. Just FYI.
Awesome, dude.
Okay, well, I think I think we can talk a little bit of border. I know we hit most of it or wrap it up, but obviously the border's out of control. I mean, hell, it's been out of control for years. I feel like Trump made some good progress towards it. We didn't get a wall paid for by Mexico like he promised. He built part of it with our money, not paid for by Mexico like he promised. But nonetheless, obviously Biden has stopped that when he came in, and it just went out of control. And then, well, I think there was a court order that made him reinstitute some of the previous administration policies, the stay in Mexico policy. So I don't know where it's at now, but we do know that, you had all these massive amounts of Haitians coming in, and then they're disappearing in the night and getting flown all over the country and released. So big problem.
Well, you have to look at the agenda of the political party that wants open borders. They don't care about illegals. They care about illegal votes. That's what this is about. It's about importing voters in the United States, spreading them out, shipping them to purple states and turning those states blue. So, I don't think this is going to get rectified until 2022 when we can, have some stability in the government. But I do think that the underlying reason for open borders is import voters.
Yeah, you better believe if they were Cubans or Venezuelans, guys that typically vote Republican, there was massive amounts of them. They would be the first ones down there on the border, securing that and building the fence.
Hey, if they want to let in a Mexican immigrant or a Haitian immigrant, that's fine. But let in one Cuban immigrant to counteract that. I'm with you, man.
Yeah, so this is one of those weird things. So in a past life, not that long ago, I worked for the United States Agency for International Development. So it's a federal agency, USAID. It's a partner agency, or actually a kind of a sibling agency to Department of State. And I worked for them for a handful of years, and it was very proud work. Does that mean everything goes perfectly? No. What I was really shocked working for USAID was that what I wasn't shocked was that it was a bunch of hippy dippy, let's all, love each other sort of stuff. Everybody wanted to sing Kumbaya. All right. And I was like, okay, that's what I anticipated. And that's what it was. These were like the most realistic hippies. That's right. Anyway, these were the most realistic hippies in many, many regards. Like they took a very gritty look at the world because they went and, they try to put out fires and hunger and natural disaster and rescue people, whether it's man-made disasters or natural disasters or both. They know the reality is staring right at them. And in spite of the fact that they're still all kumbaya and hippy dippy, they're very intelligent and they're very realistic. And so I was a little caught off guard by that. I was caught off guard by their sense of real strong ethics. Like I saw waste, fraud, waste, and abuse, though very little fraud, but and very little abuse. But I saw waste at USAID. And you know who called it out? Not other agencies. No. USAID called it out on themselves, and they made it public. Like when I say public, they were answering for this in front of Congress. That their own reports had ratted them out and saying, look, we've got to tighten this up. So they were really very ethical. And one of the issues was that constantly came up, particularly in Africa, but it comes up all over the world, was the integrity of national borders. Because what our hardworking folks at USAID can tell you is that when natural borders are porous, and it does happen sometimes for refugees and all this other stuff, but for whatever the case, that when they're porous, this puts an enormous amount of strain on the natural resources of the receiving nation. And it makes, instead of one natural disaster, it starts to snowball effect into a second, a third, and a fourth. And then it starts, then armed conflict comes, and then you've got what they call a complex disaster. And so they're saying, look, seriously, for sound economics, for disease control, for better political, relations, for all of these reasons, not the least of which is natural resources of a given people and nation, sovereign nation, You have to respect and protect borders. Now, these are the hippy dippies who I really love and respect. But these are the hippy dippies in Washington, D.C. So how is it that we can't take our own medicine?
Well, it comes down to politics. I think we've already covered that pretty well, because let's be honest, we could close that border instantly if we wanted to. Think about it. Deploy all your infantry and engineer units down there, put up triple strand, the border would be closed. It wouldn't be the most airtight border, but you'd have effective control. You could do that immediately. If you sent all the reserves down there and said, okay, guys, you're putting in obstacles until the border's closed from the Gulf to the Pacific. Yeah, in about a couple of weeks, you'd have a closed border, and you patrol it and stuff, and nothing would get through. So we could do it if we wanted to. It's just lack of political will.
All right, have we beat this to a dead horse? We're going to move on to Afghanistan. I think we're all in agreement here. So, all right, let's move into Afghanistan. It was mid-August. Essentially, the current administration just sold out our Afghan allies and allowed that country to fall to the Taliban. Cost the lives of American troops trying to freaking evacuate the last remnants of our people along with Afghan allies. And just 100% complete disaster of the likes that we haven't seen since the fall of Saigon. So go ahead, pick it up. Actually, you know what, Chad, you picked this up because you weren't in when we started these live streams about Afghanistan. So being in Afghanistan.
I will say it's definitely the biggest political blunder of my lifetime. I was born in 1982. Do the math. We've never shown weakness like this in our entire history. Do I think that it's a bigger threat than our current internal threats? No. As far as like national security things, yeah, it's a huge threat. But I don't know how we're going to recover from this. We've lost all faith of our allies. It's going to take some serious work to recover from this. As a veteran of the Afghanistan campaign, and I'm sure, Brent, you feel the same way, all the hard work that we did over there to try and liberate a country, and now all that just flushed down the toilet. It's pretty depressing. So I've got nothing but depressing things to say about it, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, I imagine that Chad's response there is the same response that hundreds of thousands of veterans around the country probably have. They all probably feel much the same way that he did, and I think you guys probably feel much the way that a lot of our Vietnam veterans felt when they came back from Vietnam. Unfortunately, we've seen this play out before. I saw a comment where the guy said, look, everybody knew as soon as we pulled out that Afghanistan would fall. Yeah, I don't think that was ever in dispute. If anything, it was a timeline at which it would happen. It seems to be in dispute from the president all the way down, but not that no one ever felt that at this point in time, Afghanistan would be able to stand on its own without our support and infrastructure. And I think that on top of that, one of the big, there's a couple of really tragic things that came out of this, and we have talked about this in previous streams, but one of the tragic things that came out of it was that there's people that have lived there for 20 years. There's 20-year-olds that women that all of a sudden have been thrown into a medieval world that they know nothing of, and they're forced into that. And secondly, you've got American citizens that are still there to this day, and people who have ties to America through green cards or different type of work cards that are either forced to, one, assimilate or being hunted down by people that want to remove their heads from their shoulders because of their involvement with us. And that happens every single day. And that's something that our president has turned his back on. He doesn't care about them. He's not interested in getting them out. It doesn't appear that he's doing any serious government work to get them out. And I think that shows just what type of person he is. I don't necessarily have a problem with us getting out of Afghanistan. I think that, and I said this before, I think that we were forced with a decision. Either we stay there for another 40 years, like we did in Japan or Germany or whatever country, and we nation build for another 40 years and get a few generations behind us so that an organization like the Taliban cannot rise to power, or we have to get out. And if the decision is, okay, we don't want to be involved in Afghanistan for a total of 60 years, okay, then that's fine. But there's better ways of pulling out, getting those people out than what we did, kind of dropping cold turkey and just loading our guys up on aircraft and hauling ass out of there and saying to hell with everybody that ever helped us. I think that's problematic. And I think that's one of those areas where we lost respect in the world. And when we go into the next country and we try to pull something like this, it's going to be very hard to convince them that we're there for the long haul and that we're going to be there to support them until the end.
Yeah. So the word that comes to my mind is, and I've been very vocal on this, is betrayal. Just an absolute betrayal, a stab in the back of people that trusted us. And if you think I'm just talking about the Afghan people, well, we could stop and just say, yes, I am. I don't care what nationality it is, and I don't care what their religious God is or what color their skin is. Damn it. If we make a promise, we owe it, and we need to keep our promise. And we stab them in the back. But no, it doesn't stop there. Oh, no. We stab the Japanese. We stab them. We stab the Koreans. We stab the French. We stab the British, our Aussie fellows, the Dutch, everybody else who served with us and lost. Yeah, we stabbed them all in the back. So betrayal to our allies. And though I have no data, I have no evidence of this. Assassin of the Gray said something in the comments there that I think is spot on. I suspect Assassin of the Gray is correct. That the reason Obama pulled out of Iraq and betrayed our allies was because that he was proven wrong. And that when he was elected as president, he was told, Mr. President, Iraq is won. All we got to do is sit here for another 40 years, and it's success. And when Biden took over, they said, Mr. President, Afghanistan is won. All we have to do is sit here for the next 40 years, and we won. And both of them were proven wrong, demonstratively in the public realm, and they had to set that record straight. So the only way, when you're sitting on top and you're the dominant power and you've achieved so much of your objectives, the only way to do that is just to force the military to bow, turn on their heels, and run. So that you can say, wasn't me. Look, the military, all of our men and women in service, they're the ones who failed us. No. Obama was a coward. He was a small-minded, petty coward. And our current president he's not small-minded, and I'm not making fun of him. He's got dementia, and I know that. That's a really shitty thing. That's not cool. I'm not making fun of that. But he's also a coward. So I feel like that's what's going on there. But if we're going to be honest, there's plenty of blame to go around. Let's point the finger around the other way, shall we? Let's spin a 180. And let's point at Rumsfeld and the Republicans and say, where was your phase 4 reconstruction? Where was your Marshall Plan? Where was your MacArthur Plan? Why were you there 10 years and 20 years and we had no military bases that were permanent duty stations with theaters and swimming pools? Where were the kids? Where was the elementary schools? Where were the yellow school buses and the nice little, townhouses? Where was that? You weren't going to build it up because they were little brown people. Is that why? What the hell? You owed them reconstruction and we didn't pay it. So we lose for that reason too.
Yeah, I also want to point out that I just saw an article recently that Al-Sadr al-Sadr, the motherfucker I fought in 2004 in the Joss Cemetery in his Mahdi army, just won a significant portion of the Iraqi parliament or whatever their government. So essentially, the motherfuckers we were fighting in 2004 about to take over Iraq. So
I think that's one of the biggest illusions of both Afghanistan and Iraq is, we have an administration that thinks they can deal politically with these people in a civil manner. That's not what they understand. And Afghanistan is going to suffer immensely under the Taliban. Just give it time.
Yeah, I think you're spot on right there, Chad. I used to have an employee work for me, and he was an Iraqi, and he got captured by U.S. forces during Desert Storm. And he was able to convince the U.S. that they could not send him back because his village was one of the ones that rose up against Saddam. And Saddam's solution was to flood his village. His village is now under 20 feet of water, wipe the whole village out. And he convinced the U.S. that he'd be killed if he went back. So he eventually got to become a citizen. And when he was working for me is when al-Sadr was starting to be in politics and first get into the Iraqi parliament. And I remember him telling me on that day when it was on the news, he goes, "You've just made the biggest mistake of your whole time in Iraq." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "If you were smart, you would send the U.S. Army, walk in there and execute him right on the spot and let everybody know you're the ones in charge." He goes, "This will bite you in the end." I've always remembered that when he said that.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens in Afghanistan because it's just devolving right back to what it was, right pre 9/11. ISIS is already making its way in there. It's funny, they're actually bombing Taliban government buildings and stuff like that there. So, but I also saw that the Biden administration was either implementing or considering implementing, releasing some of the funds that are seized to help the Taliban.
That's a genius idea. Let's go that route.
What could possibly go wrong? Because I've been giving billions of dollars to the Iranians has turned out to be a great thing.
Well, wasn't Joe Biden against the Osama bin Laden raid? Didn't he vote against it? Am I correct in that?
You are correct, sir.
That says quite a bit about the man in office right now.
Yeah, I think it was Robert Gates that said that in the last 40 years, Biden's been on the wrong side of every foreign policy decision. So, I mean, if nothing else, the man is consistent.
I imagine Barack Obama said the same thing. Not that I necessarily agree with everything Barack Obama says, but I think Obama had him in place as kind of a safety net, knowing he was a bit of a yes man. And I bet there's probably nobody more surprised in the country that Biden won the presidency than Barack Obama.
Well, you remember what Obama said right before the election? He's like, Joe's can fuck this up or something along those lines. Like it got leaked that he said that. Anyways, we ran through these topics faster than I thought we would.
Well, here's a direction we can go with it. Where do we go from here? What's 2020? What are we going to do in 2022 to fix some of this stuff?
I am so glad you asked that, Chad, because we did not talk about this, but now that you've opened the door, I can mention sex robots. I think sex robot will be the solution in 2022.
See, Doc, you say that, and I thought we were gonna come to a resolution on abortion.
Oh, wait, but they go hand in hand. Now you have more sex robots, you decrease the abortions.
There is that. I think 2022 is going to be exciting on a political level. Listen, I guarantee you, this reminds me of what I said about Trump when Trump first started thinking about running. I said, hey, if nothing else, he's going to be exciting. And I don't think he let anybody down, Democrat or Republican. He was an exciting president for everyone. And I'll say this about 2022. I think that these upcoming congressional elections are going to be exciting. They're either going to completely be disappointing to the Republicans if we don't take the House and Senate, or we'll take the House and Senate, sweep the floor with them, and it'll be exciting headed that direction. We're going to have to start getting spooled up on that because that's less than a year away now. I think about 10 months. And it's going to be, we're going to start seeing that. I think that's going to be the political discussion of 2022, is going to be everything leading up to polls and different charts and graphs and different people being interviewed, different opinions on what's going to be going on with the House and Senate, with these new congressional. I know there's a lot of Democrats that are already retiring. We can use that. Some are saying that that's sort of a view into what they think is going to be going on next year. And in other words, they ain't going to have a job. They already know they're not going to have a job, so they're getting out while the getting's good. Hopefully that's true. I just like I said before, I don't want to get too excited about it and thump my chest too much. I know that the pendulum will swing the other way, but it does worry me that if we feel like we've got victory, a lot of times defeat can be snatched from the hands of victory, you know.
Oh, the Republicans are excellent at doing that. You know, how many times have we seen, you know, they get right up to the point they're about to get the hand slammed on the mat, count down to 10, win the match, and then blow it. I mean, that's almost the safe prediction for 2022. Republicans will blow it somehow.
I think we got some rising stars, though. I don't know how you guys feel about Ron DeSantis, but I'm a big fan.
Big fan. Big fan.
Huge fan.
Right with you.
I think he's doing some fantastic things in Florida. One of the things he did last year, talking about 2021, was pass a bill in Florida where they have to teach high schoolers the horrors of communism. Actually, last month, a Floridian congresswoman, I believe, Ms. Salazar, introduced the bill in the Senate or the House, one of the two. It's HR, House of Representatives Bill 6123, and take it to a national level. I think that'd be outstanding. So we do have some rising stars, some people to keep an eye on.
I just got to ask the question. Do you think Republicans will come out to vote if they think the elections will be stolen again? No, I don't. And I think that's why it's important. I saw I was listening to someone, I don't know who it was, not important, but he kind of made the comment that kind of thinking is the wrong way to think, because if we don't go out to vote, then we are sort of creating a predetermined tragedy, right? Like if we don't go out and vote, then Democrats can come and say, hey, not only did we win, but we won fairly. Secondly, I think that if we're not going to go out and vote, then that only leaves us one other option. And are you really ready to go through with that option? Are you ready to put your family through that? Think about that. Those are real words.
Hey, that's a great point, Bruce. I'm glad you brought that up, because there's so many people. We see these comments over and over and over in the stream. You guys still believe in elections and all sort of stuff, guys. Trump fired his campaign manager shortly before the general election. Why do you think that happened? Because they weren't doing good. They weren't running a good election. They were behind the whole way, but yet everybody is convinced that this election was stolen. We listened to the Democrats for 4 years talk about freaking Russian intervention, right? That's all they touted. Oh, this was a stolen election, Russian intervention. Well, guess what? Trump ran a shitty campaign. Did you guys watch that first debate? That was terrible. That was terrible. That was cringeworthy. And I was 100% on Trump's side, man, on that. And I voted for Trump, obviously. But dude, that first debate was god awful. It was awful. And it's just, he ran a terrible campaign, guys. Terrible. Is it any shocker that he lost? He literally had to fire his campaign manager getting towards the end of the general election and put somebody else in there to try to revive it. And then he loses. And then what's the most convenient answer? Oh, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was election fraud. No, it was you, dude. All right. We learn as staff NCOs in the Marine Corps about toxic leadership. Look into that. And that's what you'll see a lot of parallels with Trump. All right. Definition of insanity, doing the same thing twice and expecting a different result. So I'm all for DeSantis, a naval officer, served honorably in the United States Navy. All right. He would make a far better president for this country than sending Trump back up there.
I went to Florida for my honeymoon back in September. Let me tell you what, that state, I've been to Florida many times, but looking at what they did during this whole COVID epidemic time frame, DeSantis has my vote. I don't have to hear anything else from the man. He's, like Brent said, he's a Navy officer. He's very professional. He's everything Trump was and wasn't. I think that he can control himself. He can maintain himself as a professional at all times. I've never seen him not. And I believe if there was any dirt they could dig up on him, they would have done it. I think that if he's given the opportunity to be the presidential candidate this next go round, I think the Democrats they should be shaking in their boots, because this guy could be everything that Trump was and professional on top of that. I think that I hope to see that happen. I hope to see Trump endorse him. I'll leave it at that. It's crazy to even talk about it now, because that's so far away. Things can change between now and then. Who knows what's going to happen? But I'm at this point, I'm a big fan of DeSantis. I'll tell you that.
What you got, Doc? I know you're eager to say something
about sex robots.
That's what I was thinking about. But I mean, you make a good point that I've been hearing this from all different ways. Was the campaign stolen? Was the election stolen? I'm inclined to believe it was. Frankly, I'm inclined to believe it because there's some pretty good indicators. There's some pretty good metrics, or independent statisticians that were looking at this, and they said the margin of error is so large. Forget about who done who wrong. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that so many of these statisticians, these independent controllers, these companies came and said, look, the margin of error is too big here. The margin of error is too big, and we really don't know who won. They weren't saying one side won, one side didn't win. And so for me, that was the big, well, hold on, the news media declared a winner. And that's why I feel like, Biden was, as someone said, he was the basement campaigner. He went to crowds of 22 that were, evenly paced 12, feet apart. He was just such a sorry candidate, clearly suffering from dementia even then. And so it's very, very hard for me to believe that that he won anything. But, on the flip side, I couldn't stand Trump. Didn't vote for him either time. And he sure as hell didn't get my vote. Not that I would vote for Biden. But, I don't know. You're right. I got real tired. The Russians stole my toilet paper. Burn. We had to listen to that. It was just so childish. And maybe it's not really worth fighting out. Maybe it was less of a theft of the election than we pretend. That, again, it looks to me like it was just the news media decided for us because no one could figure it out. And in that way, I think it was stolen. Would I vote for I guess the reality is I would go back to vote for a national election, and I swore I never would. But maybe I would if I was excited about the candidate. I admit that DeSantis is a good candidate. And if DeSantis will enact, all he's got to do is just put up a bill. I call it the Nexus 6 series bill, where every American gets to choose between the Pris model and the Rachel model. Sorry, that was a sex robot. Sorry.
Well, you got
I'm all for it.
Never a dull moment.
Kill me. We even devoted a whole hour.
What's your opinion on this? We got to hear from Les.
Well, I'm not going to predict anything happen in 2022. Not because I'm weaseling out, but I have great faith in Republicans' ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I've seen it too many times. I also predict that between now and those midterms elections, there'll be a miracle for the other side, because they always seem to get one somehow. The other thing, even if the Republicans do take over the House and Senate, what are they actually going to do? I've heard talk that, they'll go after Joe Biden and impeach him. Nah, they won't. they'll talk about it. They won't go as far as the Democrats did. And I think we all agree that there's a whole lot more to impeach Joe Biden over than there ever was for Trump's either impeachments, because that Russiagate stuff was a bunch of crap. But I'm sure we're in for interesting times regardless, if nothing else, just watching the news versus what actually happens out in the real world.
No, the real question, Les, you missed it. Is it Pris or Rachel? That's what we wanted your input on.
I voted for Rachel.
Yes, of course.
Pris and Rachel. See, I know. Can we get them with both skins and we could change every other night? I know.
Is the Rachel model?
I thought that's how they worked.
Is the Rachel model
same endoskeleton, different skin? We've discussed this, guys. It's like
you're the new doc.
Watch the stream.
Bruce, you're the new doc. Doc's been very reserved. He kind of sits back, and Bruce kind of takes over for rambles for about 15 minutes.
I'm a rambling man.
No, I'm good. Anyways, what I was trying to ask is the Rachel model going to be based off of Friends? Because that might sway my opinion.
Ethnicity is important here.
Well, we know you're the international man.
I'm very curious about all of this.
All right. Damn, guys. I expected these topics to last the whole 2 hours. Here's something that came up in 2019. Or excuse me, not 2019. Jesus Christ. 2021. With the importation ban on Russian ammunition. How has that affected the ammunition prices for Russian ammo? So I'll tell you straight up. During Trump, I bought thousands of freaking rounds. I'm well stocked. I haven't had to buy ammo in a long time, so I'm not up to date on ammo prices. But I'm interested to find out from maybe one of you guys that have been looking into that. Where are we sitting?
I'll kick it off real quick. I got a good buddy of mine that just reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey Bruce," he's like, "It's now the time to buy. It's now the time for me to start buying some ammo." And I told him, I said, "Look, man," I said, this is not just about the Russian ban. This is just about ammo prices in general. I said, I hate to admit it. I said, I kind of told myself that I was going to wait until I saw brass case 5.56 at $300 per thousand again. That was the going rate, 30 cents a round. And I said, man, I said, I don't know though. I said, I'm kind of at a point now that this 2022, I want to start purchasing some more ammunition and put some back. I cut back on my training last year. One, I guess I can blame it on having a wedding plan, but also, hey, I didn't have to buy ammunition at high ammunition prices, which nobody likes to. They don't like to buy gas at high prices. They don't like to buy ammunition. So I'm at the point now, yeah, I have a bunch put back also, but when I start training, a bunch becomes a little very quick. So I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to look at that real seriously after the new year. I said, it may be time for us to start buying a few thousand rounds here and there, even though we're paying a little more than we wanted, because we have seen prices come down quite a bit. And I was just looking today at one of the multiple freaking emails that I get, 1,000 rounds, 5.56, Russian, which I don't buy, but $300 per thousand. That doesn't sound that out there to me. A little bit overpriced, probably 30%, but it's something that I could still do. And if I can get 1,000 rounds of 7.62 by 39 for under 300, which I know I can deviate, get out there and shop a little smarter. It's available. I'm okay with that. I can swallow that. That's fine. So anyway, that's my opinion of it. This may be the year to start buying. I don't know what impact it's going to necessarily have on this Russian ammo ban, because it really looks like they're trying to do exactly what other companies have done, like Arsenal USA. Arsenal USA just moved their manufacturing from overseas to here and started churning out AKs here, right? FN has done that. Beretta has done that. Multiple companies done it. Now, FN and Beretta did it because the government required them to. Government says, hey, you want us to buy M9s from you? Guess what? You got to make them here. And they go, no problem. You're going to buy a billion M9s from us. We can afford to put a manufacturing plant in the U.S. FN did the same thing. FN gets the M4 contract and they go, oh, those are American made. And they say that with a Belgian accent because all of a sudden they put an American company, a business in over here, start churning them out here. But you're seeing the same thing with, I think, with ammunition companies. I expect to see, you're going to start seeing your Brown Bear and your Golden Tiger all of a sudden show up. It's going to say made in Pennsylvania or where the hell ever, and with misspelled English letters. But they'll find a way. They'll find a way around when there's a demand. Yes, PSA is tooling up. PSA has done fantastic things. They're making their own AK-74s and their own AKMs. They're churning out all kinds of stuff, and it looks like they're getting their quality control issues worked out, the bugs worked out. Another American manufacturer stepping up to the plate. So will the prices be what they used to be? No, probably not. Paying Ivan somewhere over in Ukraine to churn out ammunition is a lot cheaper than paying James, the union worker, here to do it. But it'll still be available. We'll adjust to the prices. Guys, we'll get through it. I'm not too worried about it. There is a demand.
Well, and I'll say this. So I'm echoing what you just said here, Bruce. I agree. I think if we can see those manufacturers start up here in America, I don't mind buying foreign names. I love buying American quality control, and I'm willing to pay more for it. Now, that said, I'm willing to pay more for it. But you know, I think you got the right idea. When 5.56 comes down to 30 cents a round, then it's time to buy. And so brass case seems to be the big thing with me, though. And that's a weird thing. So PSA makes some wonderful PSA AKs. Really, from everything I've heard, they're just incredibly solid. Why haven't they made a 5.56? Because here's the thing with that steel ammo. It's fine for taking 10 rounds, shooting 10 rounds a day and then making sure your barrel never gets hot, your chamber never gets hot. You know what I'm saying? It fails every stress test in an AR. It does not fail stress tests in an AK. And so if you're going to sell me steel 5.56, that, by the way, as soon as I start shooting brass, changes the impact of my grouping, then no, I'll buy Wolf brass. Give me Wolf brass. That's fine. Brown Bear brass. That's fine. It's just, to me, it's PMC, UMC. It's all the same. It's all, it's all plinking ammo anyway. But the point is that steel doesn't work unless you have the weapon system for it. So why, in God's green earth, someone explain to me why PSA 10 years ago didn't start making 223 AKs. And now they're going to start opening up their own, ammunition plant and everything else. God bless them. They're going to make, affordable steel rounds. Great. Here's a clue. Build your own 5.56 AKs, PSA. I mean, for God's sakes, you're going to make the ammo? Give us the weapon. All right. But beyond that, I'm just saying, I'm looking for 30 cents a round. When it starts coming back down there, if it's brass at 30 cents, it's time to start buying. It's time to start buying.
Yeah, well, one of the things you're missing there, Doc, is about a 5.56 AK is over the last 15 years, somebody always tries to introduce one. They're always economic failures. So while it sounds like such a commonly good idea, it's not something the American public's particularly interested in buying based on historical results. Not saying that can't change, but they've all been failures.
Well, they've been failures maybe because they weren't sold well, but honest to God, I'm going to make a contentious, and I get it. Not everybody's going to agree, but the people that I see shoot competitively, and whether it's YouTubers or whether it's people I know personally and my family and friends that shoot AKs, I own a couple or few. They all say the same thing. Best shooter is the 223, not the AK-74, not the AKM. The best shooting AK is the 223. Gee, Valmet figured this out. Galil figured this out. And, the few Americans that have 223 AKs, they're not selling them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe they will. I hope they will. I know this. The TDP's there. The Soviets have got the 101. I believe the 101 is a 5.56 chambered, very modern AK-74. It's not a huge change to go from the 74 cartridge to the 223 cartridge. There's not a lot of engineering changes there. PSA is already tooled up to do the 74, so I would like to see that. Maybe somebody like Magpul can put out, and maybe they already are, a 5.56 AK magazine. Magazines would be an issue. Magazines are tough to manufacture. Now, somebody like Magpul can turn them out. I'm not a Magpul fanboy, but they can certainly turn out some gosh dang magazines. And, maybe they could turn out something like that. I do see, in terms of ammunition availability, that being the way to go. In terms of Russian bans on imports, that kind of kills 5.45. 5.45 already took a huge blow when their light armor piercing rounds were banned. And now they're taking another blow because Russian manufacturer has importations have already been banned. I think that kind of relegates anyone running a 5.45 gun to it being a collectible firearm and not something that you can realistically afford to train on. But 5.56 being the next best thing, I don't think anybody familiar with a 5.45 gun would notice have a very big transition going to 5.56. So, Doc, I support your idea. And for all the PSA employees that are listening and are in this chat being quiet right now, we have spoken.
Now, Chad, on the other hand, he's a big muzzle loader. He likes, the old flintlock pistol things. But I did want to kind of encourage him to come up to the last century. I want to recommend to his inspection a Moss 49. I think they make that in both 8mm Mauser and maybe 303. Actually, it's a good little rifle, to be honest. I'm teasing you, Chad.
I haven't bought ammo in years. All my money goes to books right now. I'm still trying to work on a PhD thesis, so I'm going to be out of the game for a while.
I know what you mean. Those cavalry swords don't run out of ammo very often, but I know how you historians are.
Brent, what's your take on it? We haven't heard you this speak.
I was curious because I've gotten some emails recently that look like, don't quote me on this, but it looked like the $500 AR is making a comeback. So I was thinking, like, hey, if I'm seeing the $500 AR again, like, has ammo come back, or at least on its way back down in the price range. So that was me. I was legitimately curious on what the current cost of ammunition was in different regards.
When it comes to ammo, I think we're in the first stage of recovery because now availability is back. You have to pay for it, but you can get it. We were going through a period there where you just couldn't get it no matter what you were willing to pay. So availability is back. Longer availability lasts, the price will drop down. If you all recall, after Sandy Hook, about, I think, 2015, early 2016, 9mm got to the point it was actually cheaper than 22 long rifle for a while. And that's what led to the explosion in PCCs in general and 9mm ARs in particular. Right now, the biggest demands in ammunition are for 223, 5.56, and 9mm. So that's where all the ammo manufacturers are putting their resources. Other calibers, 40, 45, 7.62, of all variations, they're going to be up in price for a long time just because the manufacturers are going to devote towards where the most demand is until they build up their stocks. And what will happen is they'll build up stocks and then it won't be emptying out the warehouses as fast as they can make it. And then they'll say, okay, well, we're not going to make any more of those calibers. We'll start making the other calibers until our warehouses go down again. Another factor that you have contributing to that is all the ammo that we're assisting people importing in is sold before it gets here. So demand is still high. And until it gets to the point those ocean containers show up and they have to store it for long periods of time, which of course is expensive, the price will remain high.
Yeah.
I want to comment. I saw somebody comment about I don't trust a $500 AR. PSA makes the $500 AR, or at least one of the shows in town, And I've ran those guns, and I'm not saying they're the greatest rifle ever, but go back to Doc Larson's point several chats back. Like, if this is your first AR-15, why wouldn't you buy that? Why wouldn't you buy that $500 AR and then go start training with it, right? Hey, what's the worst thing to happen? You get misfires and misfeeds. Okay, now you're learning how to clear those type 1 malfunctions, right? But to be quite frank, I haven't had those problems with PSA ARs and stuff like that. I've got plenty of sub $100 lowers. Never had issues with them.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
Agreed completely. Yeah, guys, don't be afraid. The chat has passed on, but somebody made a mention of 3 good ones there. Delton, cheap ones there. Delton, Smith & Wesson, M&P line, and Ruger. Guys, those are $500-ish ARs. And PSA, as Brent said, also look at the specs on the PSAs. The one thing I love about PSA is that they have different grades and different specs. Look at the specs. Look at your bolt specs. Look at your barrel specs. If you get a good bolt and a good barrel, guys, you're fine, because those are the two I think weak points, or points that really differentiate a really expensive AR from a really inexpensive AR. And even a quality mil-spec bolt, it's like $40. So even if you buy a cheap $500 rifle and you find out that your bolt's not up to snuff, okay, buy a good mil-spec bolt, Carpenter 158, MP tested, drop it in the gun, and go. 15,000 rounds later, you can start replacing parts. If you can afford to put 15,000 rounds through a rifle, then okay, maybe you can reconsider your budget on your $500 AR. But for the vast majority of people, like Kyle Rittenhouse, a $500 AR is just fine. Let's just be realistic about what we're doing. Guys, if you knew how many tens of thousands of Americans have a $3,000 AR sitting in a gun safe with 200 rounds through it, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of them. People will spend more money on their rifle and no money on the training, thinking that they're prepared. Your mindset should be the other way around. And Doc, I'll let you comment on the rifles that you have at One Shepherd. They've got tons of rounds through those. And I know that you guys did not go out and buy $3,000 Knights Armament rifles for that training organization.
No, when we in the 1990s, the things you could get were Bushmaster, Armlight, the ABCs, Armlight, Bushmaster, Colt. So we do have some of those, very few, but just some from the 90s. But by the time we got into the 2000s, we were buying CMMG back when CMMG was a $600 rifle, right? And so we have CMMGs. Then we went to Deltons with Sharps lowers, but they're everything. You come in, you see a Sharp on there, you're like, oh, that's Sharp's rifle. They're out of business. Yeah, but they're all Delton guns. And then, of course, we have a whole lot of PSAs. And I was also remarkably reluctant. I watched guys coming and going out of One Shepherd for a half dozen years with PSAs before I made the leap and said, okay, let's buy whatever we've bought now, 30 or 40 of them. And we've not had any problems at all. So I'd say it's this, look, you get a $500 AR. And we've named some excellent ones here: the Ruger M&P, the Delton, the PSA. You get that $500 AR, and then you go learn to use it. Now, if one of two things happens, you'll get it. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to get a whole lot more expensive because I got really good with my AR. Now I want to go on the 3-gun circuit or a 2-gun circuit. Well, that's great, because you're going to be paying all sorts of money for, You just found a new expensive hobby, okay? It's like buying a sailboat. You're going to spend $40,000 in the next 5 years. So no problem dropping down, $2,500 on an AR, because you're going into race gun, right? You want a race gun, fine, because you've got a hobby, a competition. Or you decide, no, I'm well enough trained that I'm going to, either because of my career path or just because personally I want to go down the warrior path. And I want to take this to torture testing with, S&S and Les's company, Polaris, and all of these things. I'm going to go do combat style shooting under just horrifically adverse conditions. I will argue that your $500 AR is going to hold up fine in most of those conditions. But if you just want to go that extra mile and pick up that $2,500, go. Because once again, you're going to be literally jumping out of airplanes, rappelling out of helicopters, swimming across rivers. You're going to be running through the desert or going into sub-zero temperatures, and you're going to be training with this thing. So either way, that's all fine and well. But if you're listening to what I'm saying, there's a very tiny, minute percentage of the American population that goes either of those two directions, competition or hardcore tactical training. I wish more people did. They don't. So the reality is you're going to get an AR, $500 AR. You're going to, you're going to put maybe another, $1,000 into ammo. You're going to shoot that over 10 years. It's going to serve you brilliantly. And I mean that not just for plinking, but if you ever need it, God forbid, to defend yourself or your family, it's going to serve you brilliantly.
Yeah. It comes down to economics. Guys, if you've got an $80,000 car in your garage and you got $10,000 sitting in the bank, we're not talking to you. You go out and buy that Knight's Armament rifle, that Noveski, knock yourself out, buddy. Good for you. Congratulations. America, all day long. But if you're driving a car to work every day that doesn't have the AC running because you can't afford it, that $500 means something to you. Don't be discouraged. Buy the $500 AR. Do your research. Research is free. If you're not sure about what you're getting, you don't know which PSA gun to buy, reach out to John at UW Gear. Reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to walk you through it and make sure that you get the best bang for your buck for that $500, and I'll do it for free. But don't let that discourage you from buying one. You don't have to have that name brand on the side in order to be able to defend yourself.
I'll second that, Bruce, for two reasons. One, my good friend Zach Smith, he's a pro competition shooter. He's won 2 desert brutalities, damn near 1 Finnish brutality, and the rifle he has was built on an Anderson lower, and everybody makes fun of the ponies, and he's winning competitions with it. So clearly it can't be that bad. The other thing, Legos are essential. ARs are essentially Legos, and the fact that if you don't like something, change it. So you buy your $500 PSA AR and you're like, wow, I want a better trigger. Well, when you get the funds, drop in that Geisley or KE Arms trigger. I want a better rail. The standard handguard doesn't work for me. Well, bolt on that Zev rail later on when you get the money. And when you start off with those basic Magpul flip-up sights, which are basic but work, when you need something better, go to that primary arms optic. And, later on, if you feel the need, upgrade to that Trijicon aim point. The great thing about the AR is you can change things, you can upgrade things, you can tailor it to whatever you need and do like Johnny Cash, get it one piece at a time.
No, it's an excellent point. And I have to respond to Trip Killer, who asked me, what about a $500 sailboat? Hey, buddy, that's perfectly fine as long as you invest in some quality, like floaty wings, okay? Like the pool floaties. And get yourself a little margarita, and you'll be fine in a $500 sailboat. The boat won't be so fine. It'll be a little waterlogged, but you'll be fine.
All right, guys, we are at the 2-hour mark. So what I want to do is I want to go around the horn. We'll start with Les, working our way around. And just final thoughts, if you want to mention what you got in store for the coming year here, for your respective YouTube channel, if you have one, you can go ahead and do that as well. So kicking it off, let's go with Les.
Well, final thoughts on 2021. It's over. Yay! Hopefully 2022 is going to be a bit better. However, I think it's going to be completely interesting, regardless of whatever happens. As far as my YouTube channel, this coming Friday, I'll be premiering a video about the helicopter operations at One Shepherd during the 40th anniversary. And the following week, we'll be having a video about the 40th anniversary FTX. Please tune in and check it out, everybody.
Okay, so my video in this year, I think what we're going to wind up doing is some joint endeavors with various people, some of them on this very panel. And we'll start doing some statistics and, start putting together individual shooting skills and small unit tactics with live fire. And what I mean by that is to actually put some of these common, I don't want to say myths, but commonly held beliefs, we're going to put that to the test and see if it holds up under, live fire. That's easy to say now, don't worry. We'll more on that to come. Of course, I do want to promote One Shepherd this year, that we have 4 semesters coming up, and registration opens this coming Saturday, 8 January. We do have 2 semesters here in West Virginia with Bravo Company, and we have 2 semesters in Missouri with Alpha Company. So be looking forward to that. And then the last thing, and I'm surprised that Les did not say this, Les's company has not released a date yet, but does intend to announce in 2022 the Insurgent Warfighter course. So that's a week-long. It's a week-long course on insurgency and guerrilla warfare.
As far as 2022 goes, I'm doing a lot of reading and a lot of studying. That's all that's in store for me. Just kind of recapping on everything that was discussed. As far as 2021 goes, I would say watch how the left is using January 6th. I think they're using it in some dangerous ways. I think it spotlights how Marxists tend to think. And they believe they're on the right side of history. They believe they can bring in the utopia. You can lie, cheat, or steal to bring in the utopia. I mean, who wouldn't? But I think that's probably the biggest danger I think that we're going to continue to face into 2022 from the other side of the political aisle.
All right, guys. So I've kind of promised that I would promise myself that I would get a video out in the next week or two on my Beltman belt. I know we haven't talked a lot necessarily about concealed carry on these live streams yet, but I've got a Beltman belt that is 17 years old, daily wear. Has been submerged in water, sweat. I wear it. I'm not exaggerating. Every day. Out of the 17 years, there's probably less than 2 weeks that hasn't been around my waist on a daily account with a firearm on it. And it has been a fantastic belt. So I was a good boy. Santa brought me a new Beltman belt this year. I'm super excited about, and I haven't put it on because I want to do the comparison video first. So I'm going to have that coming out on my channel really soon, because mid-month I'm going to be traveling to Atlanta for a work detail, unfortunately, because I'm going to be missing the SNS Training Solutions Winter Forge event, which was a fantastic event last year. And I'm kind of disappointed I'm not going to be making it this year. And lastly, I like to give those on the other side of the aisle credit where credit is due. I happen to agree with Joe Biden on a few things. One of those being, let's go.
Oh my God, I can't top that. That was too good. Jesus Christ. You guys haven't seen that clip. It's just epic. All right, guys. Last night I did a live stream, so I apologize to the guys on the panel. What happened is I had another commitment, and I didn't want to keep those guys up too late. Two of our panelists are on the East Coast, the communist coast, and I didn't want to keep them up too late. And then what ended up happening is my call ended a lot earlier than I thought. So I just did a solo live stream, but I did bring in Cole Salmons, the head honcho at SNS, to talk about Winter Forge. So I pretty much what I got going on in the coming year, I answered with that live stream last night. So when I took some questions from the audience. So if you're curious about what's coming down the pipe on my channel, go back and watch that. So to piggyback on what Bruce just said, hey, Winter Forge is what is immediately coming down the pipe for me. And that is coming up. The dates for that are January 14th and 17th. And this week is the final week that you can enroll in that. And it is just a phenomenal training exercise, guys. Cold weather training is just awesome. And I just put together a video covering the gear that I'm taking up to Winter Forge. I'm going to release that tomorrow morning. I didn't want to release it tonight because I didn't want it to interfere with the live stream. So you guys can look forward to that tomorrow morning. Also releasing on Friday, the day before the registration opens up for One Shepherd for the all the semesters for the year. I'm going to be releasing the video covering the field training exercise for the 40th anniversary One Shepherd's training semester. It's an hour and a half long, but it is a lot of in-depth video, and that's even edited down, but I think you guys will really enjoy it. So if you've hung around this live stream for 2 hours watching us, bump our gums, I think you're going to sit through and watch the hour and a half long FTX video for the 40th. So it was just a phenomenal training exercise. So that's pretty much all I got, guys. 2021 was kind of shitty, and hopefully 2022 will be a little bit better. So with that being said, does anybody have any saved rounds before we cut this off?
At least it wasn't 2020.
This is true. This is true.
Bravo, sir.
And what does anybody happen to know the count on how many weeks we've gone to stop the spread since that was
we're
started?
beginning our 3rd year of stopping the spread.
Yeah, 3 years stopping the spread. Jesus, ridiculous. So, all I can say, guys, is in Texas, nobody does that COVID bullshit. You see some guys with
Brent,
go to people with masks.
Go to Florida. It's like it never happened.
Yeah, I can only. I feel for like the Les and the docs that do live like that. Is it still that bad, even though you got a new governor?
It's improving, but there's still a lot of governmental bullshit. Like when I went to the gym last night, to go into the gym, I have to wear my mask. To walk down the hallway to the exercise room, I have to wear my mask. As soon as I get on the stair climber, no mask required.
The only reminder of COVID that I have in my life is when I go to my reserve training. I go to a joint base. It has Army National Guard there, Marine and Navy reserves. Well, the National Guard, they don't have to wear masks at all. So we're walking around like morons with these freaking face condoms on, and a National Guard who doesn't have to get the vaccine, who doesn't have to wear masks, are walking in the same building with no mask on. So it's my reminder of the stupidity that we are continuing to embrace going on 3 years now. So anyway, that's it, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget to leave a comment and be on the lookout for the videos I'm going to post tomorrow, as well as on Friday. And again, register for Winter Forge SNS, as well as One Shepherd registration opening up on the 8th of January. So that's it, guys.